These two items could make the difference between crossing a river or losing your car in a river. Doesn't matter if it's shallow, deep, or very deep. Everyone loves the thrill of a good river crossing. It's usually the highlight of any full drive journey. But do you know how to get across a river without damaging your car, without losing your car? What do you do if you stole your vehicle? And what do you do if it gets stuck? And how do you cross a river without a snorkel? Is it even possible?
To seatbelt or not to seatbelt?
Oh man, this is so much fun. Taking on water and drowning your motor and wetting your carpets is always going to be a possibility when you're crossing these deep rivers especially. However, the tips and advice I'm about to give you will minimize the chance of that happening. So it will almost never happen. The two things I showed you at the start, let's bring one of those up right now. This is the bung that's in the bottom of your airbox. Knowing how this functions could make the difference between losing your motor and getting across that river. Just doing a bit of engine prep here. Just check the airbox, clean it out too. I've checked the bung underneath, that's important. Make sure that's in. When I drop into this river crossing, I'm going in airbox side first. The vehicle's going down like that. The idea is if water enters your airbox, it needs to go out somewhere. It functions the way of letting things out but not in. However, they're not 100% sealed. Any pressure from outside should clamp it. However, if you get any gum nuts or something stuck inside it that can come through the snorkel, those will force it open, and that's a sure way for water to enter the airbox. You don't want that. Water gets in the motor, done. What do? You get two of these. You get one and you put silicone inside it and you keep that for your water crossings. However, sealing the bung also means that water can't get out. So you get water in a box. After a water crossing, just check it. You may have to pull a bung out just to alleviate whatever water is in there. If you want to know more about the bungs, check out the video about the snorkels at the end of this video. The general guideline of crossing a river is to, of course, check it out first, select second gear low, and then cruise through it with a good momentum, optimal rev range, staying behind your bow wave, holding your nerve, and fingers crossed you make it to the other side. The river itself, the crossing itself, those are two very different things, and we'll get to those details. Before water even touches your tyres, there's some stuff you need to do to your vehicle to prep it so it can actually cross rivers without a huge maintenance cost, I should say. It all starts in the workshop on your four-wheel drive vehicle. The obvious one first, the snorkel. It's an insurance, it's a good idea, but I'll get to how you can cross the river without one of these bad boys on there. Just be mindful, if you have a 70 series Land Cruiser or maybe some other vehicles, some of them only have a raised air intake, they're not in fact a snorkel. You want to know more about snorkels, check out the snorkel video. So I'm going to stop banging on about a snorkel because it's so obvious. Some are not so obvious. Breathers, in particular, driveline breathers. And when I say driveline breathers, it's not just front diff, rear diff, it's also gearbox and transfer case. You've got to think about all those. In my case, I have diff lockers as well, which also need a breather. Not all lockers do, depending on what type they are. Breathers aren't something new that's on your vehicle. But what we're doing is we're raising them. So what I should have set up there is raised diff breathers, extending the line. That way, when you're going through even shallow water, your breather is not underwater. Why do you need a breather in the first place? Problem is, your driveline will get hot. So inside this diff pumpkin, the air is going to be much warmer. The air outside is going to be much cooler. When you contact cold water, the pressure is going to change inside here. That pressure change means that it's going to try and suck in some more air or moisture. Covered in water, it's likely going to be moisture. And water inside your diff, it's going to end up in a huge maintenance bill later down the track, trust me. And in terms of how much they cost, diff breathers, it's a very cost-effective modification improvement to your vehicle. You could make one yourself or you could buy a pre-done kit. Very easy DIY mod too. If you don't have a diff breather, the only thing you can really do is sit and wait longer before you cross that river. It allows everything to cool down because as we spoke about before, if you've got a hot diff or a hot driveline entering that water, it's going to suck in that moisture. Every vehicle has a fuel filter. You can get a secondary fuel filter. How does a secondary fuel filter help you with water crossing? If your fuel tank is underwater, and I'll get to how that can happen a bit later, the secondary fuel filter with a water separation bowl underneath, that means that you have a clear bowl underneath, and if there's water in it, the water will be at the bottom because water is heavier than diesel or petrol. So that is an early warning sign that you may have water inside your fuel tank, or even if you've got just a little bit, it can catch it rather than sending it through the first filter, and then you might get a light on your dash and you kind of want to catch it before it gets to that filter, and you also want to catch it before it gets to your engine, because water in your engine is the whole thing we're trying to avoid here, making your vehicle waterproof, almost waterproof. We spoke about the airbox bung. What about the other superhero that's going to save your vehicle for a crossing? What is in this can? This is just water displacement. Water displacement is the bomb. Why and where do you spray it? That's the question. This could save, especially old petrol engines with a distribution cap, dizzy caps. They love this kind of stuff, because if water gets in there, you're going to conk out your car, especially on a petrol engine. There are different forms of it. I do use WD-40 for a lot of things, but when it comes to water crossings, I tend to go for what's called like inox. It does more than just the water inhibitor. Dirt sticks to it, and then when you hose your car off afterwards, when you get back from a trip, everything comes off much easier. Where would you spray it? That's the question. Terminals, especially in your batteries, especially on relays, any little sensors, anywhere where you don't want water to interfere with electrical current. Where don't you spray it? That's probably the most important thing. One place you don't spray it is on your serpentine belt. You can cause it to slip. You don't want to do that. Do not spray this on your brakes. You can spray it on your chassis, everywhere you like, but more importantly, I'm talking about the electrical contacts inside your engine bay. For clarification, I generally do this before I leave on a trip. It doesn't even matter if it's the water crossings that I'm expecting. I just do it anyway because it helps me get all the dirt off the engine bay, and it still protects the terminals. I always keep spray cans with me, because if I do encounter river crossings, I will pop the bonnet open and I will give things fresh spray, because it could have been a week since I've done it, right? And while you're in here spraying, check the airbox. Are all the clamps shut? Get the bung, get onto the bung. Prepping everything else, this is when you do it. If you've managed to do all of that to your vehicle, you've made huge inroads to making your vehicle bulletproof, actually waterproof. It's not 100% waterproof though. Can you still cross the river without a snorkel? That's up to your airbox. Technically speaking, yes you can. You can strap a tarp to the front of your vehicle. There is a product out there called a car bra, but I would just use a tarp. With the tarp, you just need to ensure that the way you fix it to your vehicle, it is nice and secure. It doesn't get caught underneath your wheel perhaps and then gets ripped off. The whole purpose of the tarp and the job of the tarp is to keep water from entering the engine bay directly in front. You'll be surprised what a tarp can actually do, or even a ground sheet. You get a nicer bow wave and you can just keep pushing and putting through, but just keep your momentum. If you do get stuck in a deep river crossing and you're relying on that tarp, well, the risk is definitely higher. If the crossing isn't very deep, but you are concerned, it's not a bad idea to do. You can cross it without being so anxious as well. 4 things you need to understand about the crossing before you even think about it: depth, length, flow rate, and the base. If any of those are a concern, I'm not sure how this is going to be. Going to have to walk it, and no one else volunteered, so here I go. If none of those are a concern, just drive it nice and gently. If it's too deep, you're going to have to walk it. If it's really long, you're going to have to find out where are the boulders and the turns and the twists. It's nice and deep in the middle, but it's, definitely doable. If the flow rate is really high, that's where you got to pair it up with the depth. The deeper it is, the more danger it is of being swept off or even changing the direction of your vehicle. So you might be driving through in a straight line thinking, I've got to go there. You may in fact have to go in and then go against the current to actually get there. And the only way to find that out is to walk the crossing first. And the general rule of thumb is, if you can't walk it, you can't drive it. Trying to keep the family jewels out of the water. Then there's a base. Base can mean a lot of different things and throw a lot of variables at you. Is it river rocks? If it's river rocks, you need to know where those big boulders are. And every time someone crosses a river and they hit something, something else shifts around. After a flood, there could be logs, there could be all kinds of stuff underneath the water. You just can't see it, or you don't know until you walk it. Because even if the water is quite clear, you still can't get the depth of where everything is. You've got to find out where the holes are. Is it a sandy base? If it's a sandy base, you may need to drop your tyre pressure even more. Imagine getting caught out while driving on hard clay and rocks all day, and then you get down to a sandy river crossing and sink your tyres into the sand because the tyre pressure is too high. Okay, I didn't know that before. Look at that, whole thing's jello. Gotta stay away from this edge. All those things you are only going to work out if you walk the crossing. Walk the left-hand wheel track first and walk the other wheel track when you come back the other way. If there are any deep sections in there, that's when you should get someone to stand there as a marker or use something as a guideline so that you can get through the correct way. This will also determine if you need to prepare your vehicle with recovery gear. River crossing recovery plan. At what point do you need to prep a recovery?
And the water coming in.
Well, it all depends on the information you got from walking that crossing. If there's any concern that you may get stuck, and this generally happens on like a sandy bottom, that's when you need to get some recovery gear ready. A snatch strap is usually the quickest way to get out. But you got to work out, are you going to be recovered forward or are you going to be recovered backwards? Are you by yourself? You're going to rely on your winch. Where is there a tree you can winch to? Don't suss that out. That's when you drown your vehicle. That's when you flood your carpets, and that's when you're sitting in a bath in your driver's seat. On top of all that, everyone needs to know their role in the recovery. Who's leading the recovery? Where's all the gear? Whose gear you're using? Who's going to be in front, who's going to be behind? All those things need to be worked out and be ready. Because if you're not ready, or if your mate's not ready, every single second that water's going to rise higher and higher. Let's cross this river. Your vehicle's running. First thing you need to do is grab low range. Doesn't matter how shallow or how deep that river is, you got to go low range. And you got to go second gear low. That's where you got to choose. First gear low is far too slow. You are not going to be able to keep up with your bow wave, and you're going to be too surgy in the water, and you're going to be going too slow. The right momentum, the right speed, and the right rev range all seems to be in second gear low. Third gear low, it's too high a gear. You are going to have to really pick up your speed to get to the optimal rev range. If you don't, you could stall, which is even worse than going too fast. Second gear low is the perfect gear for most river crossings. Next thing you need to do before you just go for it is make sure that that light is not on. Often people jump out, they want to get a photo on their phone or whatever, they haven't shut the door properly, you're focused on the river, just check that. Now you're ready to go, pop in the second gear low, ease into the water, go in with a little bit of force, not too much though. You want to start that bow wave. The harder you hit it at the start, the bigger the bow wave. But if you hit it too hard, you're going to force all that water into your fan blade and it could all be over. So don't hit it too hard, but don't hit it too soft either. Once you have your bow wave, let it get in front of you a little bit and then keep up with it. A good meter, 2 meters, look, even if it's 3 meters, it's fine. Just keep up with that bow wave. Focus on what you need to do. Are there any turns? Is there someone indicating where you got to go? Just keep an eye on all that. Adrenaline could be quite high if it's a deep river. Keep your wits about you. Yes! Keep focusing on where you have to go. Sometimes you hit a bump, you might freak out. Don't smash that accelerator down, especially if it's a sandy bottom. You will just start sinking because your wheels are spinning too fast. Hold your nerve, get to the other side. As you pop out, just ease it out. There's no need to just speed out of it. If there's someone in front of you that's parked their vehicle because they haven't parked it far enough away to allow you enough space, beware your brakes are not going to work as well as they do when they're dry. It's different for every single river, and that's why you have to go and walk it. Watch others that go before you, learn from their mistakes, and also share your mistakes for the next person who's going to cross. Good luck.
You're going to enjoy that. Go open my doors and see if there's any water in.
Well, hopefully there's not.
To seatbelt or not to seatbelt? That is the debate. During a river crossing, like a deep river crossing, there's a debate. There's a disagreement between one camp and the other camp. And which camp are you on? Are you a seatbelt on person or you're a seatbelt off person when it comes to a river crossing? The argument goes, if you're wearing a seatbelt and something goes pear-shaped and you end up off track or the car flips over or you start floating away, not wearing a seatbelt enables you to escape much faster. I would argue that you should wear your seatbelt. It gives you that extra split second to think about everyone else in your car. You are the captain of the vessel now because your car's become a bloody boat or a submarine. You are responsible for everyone else in the car. Therefore, seatbelt on. And one other thing, someone who you are very familiar with on this channel, once upon a time, we went for a bog hole, right? It severely dipped down on one side. He actually got chucked out of his driver's seat into the passenger side, I kid you not, because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Lost control of the car just stopped. Lucky for him. But he was very red-faced, very embarrassed. So I reckon seatbelts on. Top 5 things not to do while crossing a river. Number 1, do not stop. And that means if you're following a convoy, don't go through at the same time. Let that vehicle cross, because if they get stuck, you're stopping. What happens when you stop? Water makes its way into your vehicle much faster. As you're moving, you are in a way preventing the water from going into the car. Number 2, never change gears while you're driving through a deep water crossing. This is for manual vehicles. If water gets into the clutch, it could slip and you're back to number 1. You stopped. Do not turn your engine off unless you know or you suspect water's coming through that airbox. Once you turn that engine off, you can't turn it on. Because if there's water that's inside your engine now, because it can come up through the exhaust, it can come through the airbox, because you're sitting there, do not turn that engine on. Water does not compress. It doesn't burn like petrol and diesel. So when diesel enters that chamber, it gets ignited and then it gets compressed. And that's where you'll bend a rod and you'll destroy your engine and you are not going anywhere. If you stall your vehicle while you're in deep water, well, that water's going to make its way up the exhaust pipe, into the turbo, into your engine that way too. Don't stall your car. Don't enter a river crossing too fast. That can cause a fan blade to snap off, or even worse, push it into the radiator. If that happens, well, you're going to run pretty hot as soon as you get out of that river. And the last thing you should not do while crossing a river is open your doors. It might seem obvious, right? If you get stuck, a lot of people just straight away, they go to open their door and then they realize, oh, shit, I'll just let all the water in a lot faster. Climb through the window instead. The most fun water crossing you can do is the one that you have to do. Doesn't matter how shallow or deep it is. If you have to cross it, it is so much more fun. It's so much more thrilling. And if you get stuck, you're not going to be too pissed off about it because you had to cross this river. You had no choice if you wanted to keep going further along. On the other hand, if you have a choice and there's a chicken track around it, or there's a much easier place to cross, maybe consider that. If you do get stuck in a deep river crossing and it was your choice and you had a choice to go around it, you're going to be kicking yourself, trust me. If you have to do it, it's much more fun. I just spent 4 hours crossing a river. Get out there, give it a go, start shallow, go deeper. It's going to be a lot of fun if you make it to the other side. Fingers crossed. See you next time.